My son skipped his mother's funeral, said it wasn't worth his time. While I buried my wife in the rain, he posted beach selfies from Miami. A week later, he called about his mortgage. I said 5 words. I don't care anymore. That silence, it was just the beginning. My name is Otis, and until recently, I was a husband of 37 years. My wife, Margaret, wasn't just my partner. She was the heart of our home, the glue that held this family together. She was a school teacher by profession, but a nurturer by nature. The kind of woman who remembered everyone's birthday, who showed up with a hot meal when someone was sick, who gave more than she ever asked for. She lived for her family, especially for our son, Timothy. Margaret was diagnosed with cancer a little over 2 years ago. At first, we were hopeful. Caught early, the doctors said. She stayed strong through the treatments, smiling even on the worst days. And when she couldn't smile anymore, I did it for both of us. I became her full-time caregiver, learning how to cook meals she could keep down, managing her medications, driving to every appointment. I promised her I'd never let her feel alone in this fight. And I didn't. Timothy was once the kind of boy who drew his mother pictures when she was sick, who held her hand at grocery stores and brought her dandelions from the yard. He grew up smart, driven, ambitious. Went off to college, then landed a marketing job in New York. Margaret was so proud. She kept every one of his certificates, framed his awards, bragged about his client wins like they were Nobel Prizes. But something changed. The calls got shorter, the visits fewer. Busy, he said. So much going on. Margaret made excuses for him constantly. Said young people are scared of illness, that he was just building his life, that he'd come when it mattered. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the truth? When it mattered most, Timothy didn't come. Not when the treatment stopped working. Not when Margaret asked for him by name. Not when she took her final breath on a quiet January morning, her hand in mine. And not at her funeral. That day, while rain soaked through my suit and I stood by the woman who had loved him unconditionally, our son was sunbathing in Miami. And when he finally did call, it wasn't to apologize, it was to ask about the mortgage. It didn't happen all at once. That's the part that hurts the most. It wasn't a big fight or some dramatic fallout. It was slower, like watching paint peel from the walls of a home you built with your bare hands. At first, you barely notice it. Then one day, the room looks nothing like it used to. Timothy used to call every Sunday, like clockwork. We'd talk about work, his new apartment, what he was cooking, or more accurately, what takeout he'd ordered. Margaret would sit close by, sometimes chiming in, always smiling. Those calls were her favorite part of the week. But then came the busy Sundays, the missed calls, the forgotten callbacks. Then he started texting instead, just a few lines. Hey, work's crazy, catch you next week. Or, sorry, can't talk right now, big deadline. At first, Margaret clung to those texts like lifelines. At least he's thinking of us, she'd say, eyes scanning each word like it held a secret code of affection. But over time, even those messages started drying up. Sunday calls became once-a-month texts. Then nothing at all unless we reached out first. The visits became rare occasions, business trips that happened to bring him into town, obligations he squeezed us into, like a dentist appointment you can't cancel. He'd stay just long enough for a home-cooked meal and a few smiles, then he'd glance at his phone, make excuses about early flights, and be gone before dessert. Margaret never stopped defending him. Not once. When friends asked where Timothy had been during the holidays, she'd smile politely and say, "Oh, he had work. Those big marketing campaigns, you know." When her own sister questioned his absence during her birthday party, Margaret just said, "He's doing what we raised him to do, pursuing success." I remember one winter, Timothy came down with pneumonia during his sophomore year. Margaret drove 6 hours in a snowstorm to sit by his bedside. She didn't sleep for 2 days, watching over him, making sure he had warm soup, clean clothes, someone to talk to. Years later, when she needed the same kind of care, not even daily, just a visit, he couldn't find the time. She drove through blizzards to attend his college presentations, skipped out on family gatherings to support his professional achievements. Bought plane tickets we couldn't afford just to watch him speak for 7 minutes on a stage. Timothy never once looked uncomfortable accepting her sacrifices, never once questioned if he deserved that kind of loyalty. And Margaret? She never once made him feel guilty for not returning it. She believed in him. Always. When people criticized Timothy for being distant, Margaret shut them down with a soft voice and fierce loyalty. "He's just overwhelmed," she'd say. "He'll come around. He just needs time." I wish she'd been right. Looking back, I wonder if we helped create the man he became. Maybe we were too quick to forgive, too eager to understand, too afraid to draw lines. Margaret gave him everything and asked for nothing. And in return, he gave her silence. We found out in October Margaret had cancer, the kind that doesn't come with fair odds. We sat in that cold, sterile office while the doctor explained words I couldn't fully grasp but understood instantly in my gut. It was serious, advanced. Treatment would buy us time, not forever. Margaret's first words weren't about herself. They were about Timothy. "How do we tell him?" she whispered. That's who she was, facing her own mortality, and still her first instinct was to protect our son. I called him that evening. Tried to keep my voice steady. "Your mom's got some health issues," I said. "They want to start treatment right away." His response? Flat. "What kind of treatment? Chemo?" I told him yes. There was a pause. Then, "Well, keep me posted. I'm sure she'll beat it." Posted. As if I were updating him on the weather. The first round of chemo was brutal. Margaret lost her appetite, her energy, her hair. But not her spirit, not at first. She kept saying Timothy would come. Once he understands how serious it is, he'll be here. And to be fair, he did come twice. Once during the early stages when she could still move around and fake strength. He brought expensive flowers, stayed for dinner, made jokes that made her laugh, and left after 2 hours. "I've got a flight early tomorrow," he said. "But this was great. Let's do it again soon." The second visit was shorter. He brought the same kind of flowers, as if repeating the gesture made up for the growing emotional distance. Margaret was thinner, weaker, needing help just to get from her chair to the bathroom. But still, she smiled. Still, she asked him about work, about his life in the city, about the girlfriend she only knew through Instagram. He smiled, nodded, told stories, but never once asked about her pain. After that, the visits stopped. He'd call every now and then, always distracted, always between meetings. She'd light up every time his name appeared on her phone screen. But it never lasted. 5-minute conversations, 10 at most. She'd hang up and smile at me, pretending it was enough. Pretending that a son-ass voice over a weak phone connection was the same as a hand to hold. I stopped pretending. I watched her fade, day by day, her weight dropping, her bones more visible, her voice softer with each passing week. I learned how to manage her medications, how to clean wounds I didn't want to acknowledge, how to pretend I wasn't breaking apart inside. I became a nurse, a cook, a scheduler, a grief counselor, everything but a husband, because that role was disappearing with her. And Timothy, when we needed him most, he vanished. Margaret still defended him. Even as she grew too weak to walk on her own, she whispered, "He's just scared, Otis. Young people don't know how to face death. He'll regret this someday." I wanted to believe her, but I also wanted to scream. I remember one December afternoon. Margaret was having a good day. She was sitting up, her voice was strong, and she said, "Could you call Timothy? I'd love for him to see me like this, looking stronger." My hands shook as I dialed. His answer? "Dad, it's insane over here. This client needs revisions by Monday and I'm already behind. Tell Mom I'm thinking of her, okay?" He never came. Thanksgiving passed. Christmas too. Margaret kept her hopes alive with every buzz of her phone, but eventually she stopped asking. The truth was too heavy to bear. She never said it out loud, but I knew. She knew he wasn't coming. And still, she loved him. Right until the end. In her final days, when she could barely speak, she gripped my hand and whispered, "Promise me you'll understand him." He's still my boy. I promised her, but I didn't know then that he wouldn't even show up to say goodbye. The morning of the funeral was gray and wet. Exactly the kind of day Margaret would have called melancholy but poetic. Rain tapped gently against the windows as I dressed in the black suit she picked out for me years ago, the one she said made me look respectable and strong. I didn't feel either. The house felt emptier than it ever had. Margaret's perfume still clung faintly to the bedroom curtains. Her favorite mug sat clean on the drying rack, waiting for a coffee she'd never drink again. I ran a comb through my hair with trembling hands and looked at myself in the mirror. A widower, a father, and today, a man trying to hold it together while burying the only woman who ever made sense of his world. At the cemetery, everything was prepared just as she'd wanted. Polished oak casket, white lilies, soft music playing from the speakers tucked beneath the canopy. The funeral director nodded at me with professional sympathy, his eyes saying what words couldn't. Guests began to arrive, relatives from 3 states, friends from Margaret's teaching years, former students, neighbors. All in black, all holding umbrellas against the drizzle. I checked my phone. Again, no missed calls, no texts. I'd tried calling Timothy 3 times that morning. Voicemail, straight to it. The 4th time he answered. "Dad?" he said, sounding distracted. Behind him I heard laughter, music, voices that didn't belong anywhere near grief. "Timothy, where are you?" I asked. "The ceremony starts in 30 minutes. A pause. Then more of that background noise, waves, laughter, clinking glasses. "I can't make it," he said flatly. "I've got important business to handle." What business could possibly be more important than your mother's funeral? Another pause. Then the words I'll never forget. "Honestly, this whole thing isn't worth my time. Stop bothering me." Click, dial tone. I stood there, phone still pressed to my ear, the screen reflecting my stunned expression like a mirror of failure. Around me, people were settling into their seats. The pastor approached the podium. The air smelled like rain and lilies. Margaret's casket gleamed beneath the muted light. Her photograph sat beside it, eyes bright, smile warm, radiating the same love she had always poured into our lives. She would have known what to say to him. She always knew how to reach him when I couldn't. But not anymore. I returned to my seat, nodding to Aunt May as she whispered, "Where's Timothy?" "He'll be along," I lied, tasting the bitterness of it as I said it. He had important business. Thunder rumbled somewhere in the distance, a rolling echo of everything unsaid. The pastor spoke with reverence, painting vivid memories of Margaret's life. Her years as a teacher, her unwavering love for family, her belief in the power of kindness. I tried to listen, but the words landed like punches. Every tribute to her devotion felt like a reminder of Timothy's absence. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out discreetly. Instagram notifications. Sarah, Timothy's wife, had posted a video. I tapped it. Palm trees, sunshine, a luxury resort, waves lapping at the sand, people lounging in beach chairs, music, laughter. Sarah's voice came through. "What a perfect day in Miami. Seriously, this place is paradise. 15 minutes ago. Location tagged, Miami Beach." Margaret was being lowered into the ground, and her son was sipping tropical drinks. I felt something in me harden. The man who'd missed holidays, skipped visits, dodged calls, was now publicly vacationing while we laid his mother to rest. I wanted to stand up, to shout the truth in front of everyone, to say, "This is who Timothy became." But instead, I put my phone away and stayed silent, because Margaret deserved dignity, even if her son had none to offer. The pastor finished. A moment of silence followed. I didn't pray. I just stared at the chair where Timothy should have been. Empty. Afterward, people approached me, offering soft condolences. "She was remarkable. So sorry for your loss. She raised such a wonderful family." Family, if only they knew. As we moved toward the gravesite, the wind picked up and rain began to fall again, heavier this time. I didn't mind. It matched the storm inside me. Margaret had always insisted we keep that chair open for him just in case. "You never know," she'd said. "Sometimes hope is all we have." But that day I learned something Margaret never wanted to admit. Hope can be cruel. When the casket was finally lowered, I dropped a single white lily onto the lid and whispered, "He's not coming. I'm sorry." The ground swallowed her gently. The umbrella above me strained against the wind. People slowly dispersed, umbrellas closing, cars starting. I stood there long after they left, the earth fresh and raw before me. I reached into my coat and pulled out my phone one last time. I called him again, straight to voicemail. Again, blocked. The silence rang louder than thunder. By the time I got home, the rain had soaked through my funeral suit. I didn't bother changing. I walked straight to the back room, pulled out my phone, and sat down at Margaret's desk. The one where she used to write lesson plans, pay bills, and send birthday cards to people Timothy had long forgotten. I wasn't shaking anymore. The grief had burned away. What remained was cold, precise fury, the kind Margaret would have tried to soften. But she wasn't here to soften anything now. I dialed Timothy's number one last time. It rang twice before he picked up. "What now, Dad?" Same tone, same edge, as if I was the one inconveniencing him. "I saw the video," I said. "Miami Beach, palm trees, your wife's voice saying it was a perfect day." Silence. "That's not what you think it is," he said finally. "Sarah just—" "Don't lie to me," I snapped. My voice echoed off the walls, the first time I'd raised it in years. Another pause, then finally, "Fine, yeah, I'm in Florida, so what?" "So what?" I repeated. "Your mother's funeral was today." "Dad," he sighed. "I told you. That stuff doesn't help anyone, she's gone. I didn't want to fly in just to stand around crying." "You think this was about you? About your comfort?" My voice was rising again. "She gave you everything, every ounce of love, every second of her life." "She's dead," he snapped. "What good would it have done if I stood around being miserable?" I stood up, pacing, my fist clenched around the phone. "You weren't just absent at her funeral," I said slowly. "You were on vacation, drinking by a pool while the woman who raised you was lowered into the ground." "Look, it's not that deep," he said. "And if this is about money, just tell me, the mortgage." That did it. I stopped pacing, sat down, and with absolute clarity I said, "You're not my responsibility anymore." "What does that mean?" "It means I canceled the payments." "What payments?" "Your mortgage. The one your mother and I have been covering for 8 years. $3,200 every month. Gone. Effective immediately." He exploded. "Are you kidding me? I have bills, Dad. I could lose the apartment. You promised. And you promised to visit, to call, to care. That's not the same. No, it's not. One was a debt of love. The other was financial enablement. Your mother believed in you. I just funded the illusion." The silence was sharp this time, panicked. I can't afford it without you." "Then you'll figure it out," I said. "Like adults do." He laughed bitterly. "So this is your revenge? Mom dies and now you cut me off?" "No," I said, "this is justice. You chose your comfort over your family. Now you get to live with that choice. You're going to regret this." I nodded even though he couldn't see it. "Maybe, but I won't regret standing up for your mother. Not this time." And then I hung up. I blocked his number. Again. For the first time in 8 years, I felt light. That night the house was still. Peaceful in a way it hadn't been in months. No phone buzzing with mortgage alerts. No emails about missed payments. No lingering fear that I was failing as a father. Just quiet. I sat in Margaret's chair, the one she always curled into with a book and a cup of tea. I looked around the living room and realized how much of our life was still here. Photos, books, worn cushions, memories embedded into every scratch on the coffee table. But something else was here now, too. Peace. For the first time since Margaret's diagnosis, I wasn't juggling someone else's chaos. I wasn't covering for Timothy. I wasn't making excuses for him. I wasn't enabling him. I was just living. The next morning, I woke up at dawn without an alarm. I made coffee, only one mug this time, and stood by the kitchen window, watching the early light stretch across the backyard. Margaret's garden looked tired but salvageable. She had always loved that space. Tending to it felt like the closest thing to tending to her memory. I spent the day pulling weeds and turning soil. My hands ached, but in a good way. The way honest labor aches, not the way stress and guilt had weighed on me for so long. I didn't hear from Timothy the next day, or the next, and by the end of that week I realized something both freeing and devastating. I didn't miss the sound of his voice, not the version of him he'd become. That man, the one who'd blocked me, ignored his dying mother, and vacationed through her funeral, was a stranger. Margaret once told me, "Parenting doesn't stop, Otis. It just changes shape." But maybe the shape it had taken for me had become something warped, more like a crutch for him than a compass. 8 years of mortgage payments, $200 every month, $300,000 sent to support a lifestyle that Timothy never once thanked us for. Margaret and I could have remodeled the kitchen, taken that trip to Italy, helped a scholarship fund, built something lasting. But instead, we built Timothy's cushion. And what did it buy us? A beachside betrayal. She wanted him taken care of. She believed he would come around. She died with that belief still intact. But I no longer had the luxury of believing in what he might become. I had to reckon with what he was, a man who saw his mother's life as disposable, her death as an inconvenience, and her love as a transaction. So no, I wasn't going to feel guilty for canceling those payments. I wasn't going to regret finally drawing a line, because love isn't infinite when it's one-sided, because sacrifice without appreciation becomes servitude, because the man I raised had every opportunity to be decent, and chose not to be. I slept through the night for the first time in weeks. No dreams, no grief, just rest. Margaret's chair felt more like a throne than a monument now. The garden bloomed with possibility. The bank account reflected a life no longer drained by someone else's irresponsibility. And in that silence, I found clarity. I'd kept Timothy afloat for years, waiting for gratitude, waiting for growth. But sometimes what a grown man needs most is to be let go. Not out of anger, but out of mercy, out of love with boundaries. The kind Margaret never could bring herself to give. But I could. I had to. It was 3 weeks before Timothy called again. Not a voicemail, not a text, a real phone call. His number flashed on my screen like a ghost from a past I no longer lived in. I stared at it for 3 rings. Curiosity won. "Dad, hey," he said, voice forced casual, like we were picking up after a regular week, not radio silence following a funeral he skipped. "I just got back from Florida. Listen, there's this weird issue with the mortgage. My payment didn't go through. Bank says something about the auto transfer being canceled. Did you forget to approve something?" I took a sip of coffee and leaned back in Margaret's chair. The audacity didn't surprise me anymore, but it still stung. "No," I said. "Wasn't a mistake." A pause. I could hear him shuffling papers in the background. "What do you mean? Can you call the bank and fix it?" "No, that's your responsibility now." Another pause. Longer this time. "My responsibility?" he asked, his voice losing that breezy edge. "Dad, you've always taken care of this. And your mother always took care of you," I said calmly, "even when you didn't deserve it." He went quiet again. "This is about the funeral, isn't it?" "It's about choices," I said. "Yours." "Okay, look," he began. "I made a mistake. I was emotional. I couldn't handle it. But that doesn't mean you cut me off financially. That's not fair." "No," I said. "What wasn't fair was watching your mother spend her final months begging for your time while you gave it to beachfront cocktails." "That's not—" "Dad, come on. You're being dramatic." "She waited for you, Timothy, right up to the end. Every day she asked if you'd called, and I kept lying, because the truth would have broken her." I heard him sigh heavily. "I sent flowers. I couldn't just drop everything. I've got a life. She gave her life for you. Okay, I get it, all right. I messed up, but punishing me with foreclosure? Come on. I'm not punishing you. I'm letting you experience adulthood the way the rest of us do. So that's it? He snapped. You're cutting me off? No, I'm stepping back. There's a difference. You said her funeral wasn't worth your time. I decided your mortgage isn't worth mine. His silence said more than his tantrums ever had. I could feel it sinking in, the realization that his safety net had finally been rolled up. You promised, he said quietly. You said you'd always help. And you promised to be there for your mother, I said. Promises go both ways, Timothy. There was a long, heavy silence on the line. Then, you're not serious, you'd really let me lose everything? No, I'm letting you learn to save yourself. And with that, I hung up. 5 minutes later, he called from a different number. I answered, calm as before. Don't hang up, he said, his voice climbing. You're really going to throw me away over one mistake? One mistake, I repeated. This was years in the making. You missed birthdays, holidays, her diagnosis, her treatment. You skipped the funeral and called me a week later asking for money. I needed time to grieve. You needed time to vacation. Don't rewrite the story now. This is revenge, then. No, this is accountability, justice if you prefer. You think Mom would want this? No, she wanted me to protect you forever. But she also wanted you to grow up. She just couldn't bring herself to stop protecting you long enough to let you learn. I could hear it then. The panic, the cracks in his voice, the truth rising in his throat. I can't afford to lose this place. Then get to work. Dad, please. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, goodbye, Timothy. Then I blocked his number, again, and the house returned to silence. Clean, still, and peaceful. Justice, at last, had been served. Not with revenge, not with anger, but with clarity, and a hard-earned boundary that should have been drawn years ago. This isn't a story about vengeance. It's about love, real love, the kind that holds people accountable, the kind that says no more when someone takes without giving, when someone abuses loyalty, when someone confuses support for servitude. Margaret believed in forgiveness. She believed people could change, that love was stronger than disappointment. But even the strongest love can't carry the weight of someone else's choices forever. For years, I thought I was helping Timothy. I thought that by paying his mortgage, excusing his absence, covering for his failures, I was giving him the stability he needed to grow. But I wasn't helping. I was cushioning, enabling, protecting him from the reality that every adult must face, that love isn't owed, and support isn't limitless. Margaret died with faith in him. She believed her son would show up when it mattered. He didn't. And when given the chance to honor her memory, he chose cocktails over caskets, sunshine over sorrow, convenience over character. So I made a choice too. Not out of spite, not out of revenge, out of love, for myself, for the memory of the woman who spent her life giving, and for the son who might still, someday, learn what love really means. Because love isn't just flowers and phone calls when it's easy. It's being there when it's hard. It's showing up when it counts. It is doing the thing you don't want to do because someone else needs you to. Timothy called her funeral a waste of time, so I made sure he'd never mistake my silence for approval again. And now I sit in the home Margaret and I built, surrounded by her garden, her photos, her warmth. And for the first time in years, I am not waiting for an apology, an explanation, or a call. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is stop saving them and let them save themselves. If this story struck a chord with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. And in the comments, tell me, have you ever had to walk away from someone you love for your own peace? What happened? I read every single one. Remember, love isn't about saying yes forever. Sometimes it's about knowing when to say enough. And if you're going through something similar, you're not cruel, you're not selfish, You're choosing clarity over chaos, and that too is love.